Hi guys, today me and Katya will be answering to you top 25 most Googled questions about Russia. We'll have 5 groups: will, does, is, when, why. And let's start with the future, with will. Will Russia ever join the EU?
That's a complicated one. Until 2014 Crimea situation, there were discussions about the visa-free regime and free trade zone, but not anymore. There was even an accepted plan to make a unified free trade zone from Lisbon to Vladivostok, but you know, Crimean situation. And the next question, will Russia win Eurovision 2020?
Yeah. This year from Russia there will be a trendy, hypey rapper Little Big who is generally fitting the trend on the strange rap music. So yeah, Russia will win. And the next question, will Russian economy collapse?
You never know, but doesn't seem like it should. Nevertheless, country is dependent on the raw materials export. The economy is quite diversified, with 20% indeed being natural resources export. The rest is spread between the high technology, education, tourism, and etc. And being the largest exporter of gas in the world, Russia economically doesn't seem to be in danger. Will Russia ever be free?
Not really sure what you mean by free, but let's say yes. Russian people have a very long history of being under the tough hand of a ruling class, starting with many centuries of what though was not called a slavery, but technically was a slavery. We call it крепостное право. That right basically allowed aristocrats to own peasants, sell them and make them do whatever they want. That ended only in 1861 and slowly led to the economical crisis. And even after that, everything in the country was basically decided by the emperor, with some few very weak attempts to make a parliament. That eventually led to the Communist Revolution of 1917, a quick grasp of free air, and then years of Stalin's dictatorship. After his death, country started to liberate step by step. And eventually it led to the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union and having what we have now, probably the most free version of Russia. So yeah, I think Russia will be free, and with a grain of salt, it is. Next question you ask Google about Russia. Will Russia ever rise? Huh, Katya?
Seems like yes, but it won't be easy. And that's because quite a bit of Russian people still have this Soviet attitude based on the futility of working, leading to what in Russia we call haltura, an attempt to make your work not better, but quicker, and with the smallest effort. That slowly fades away with the new generations finishing universities, but it seems like that to fully renew the country, there will be needed a couple of more generations. Moving to the new block, does questions. Does Russia own Kazakhstan?
I understand why you're asking, and immediately the answer, no! And I don't think it has any intention to do so. Until 1991 collapse, USSR included multiple republics, among them Russia, Kazakhstan and 14 others. And in that otherwise equal union, Russia was kinda a leader. And that's why some people have an idea that Russia owns the republics of USSR. It was not like that, with every republic having their own head, though all of them were quite dependent on the heads of the Soviet government in general, who were sitting in Moscow. So, to make it clear, Russia does not equal USSR, and USSR does not equal Russia. To a certain extent. Before Soviet time, Kazakhstan was mainly independent from Russia, except for the 50 years since the late 19th and early 20th century, when Russia basically controlled the territory of the modern Kazakhstan. But now, Russia doesn't own it and have no intention to do so. Привет, казахи! And the next question that you ask Google about Russia. Does Russia exist?
That's rather a philosophical question. Maybe it's just a computer game in which the higher intellect teenager is playing from some exoplanet a couple of millions light years away. You never know. Does Russia have 2 capitals?
Nope. But though the capital is now in Moscow, it was not always like that. Before, for around 3 centuries, the capital was in St. Petersburg, which we now call a northern capital, though it's not a capital anymore. And sometimes we also call Kazan a third capital of Russia, but that's just because it's a big and beautiful city. During World War II they also made an emergency capital in the city of Yekaterinburg in case of Moscow being taken by Nazi Germany soldiers. But as you know, it never happened. Before Imperial period and even before the 15th century defeat of Tatars and Mongols, it was even more complicated, so we won't even bother. Here is a list of all Russian capitals. Does Russia speak French?
Bah oui, mais bien sûr Russie parle français, c'est évidemment mais non. Not really. But if you read Novels by Leo Tolstoy, for example, you won't be surprised that for the high society, French was second and sometimes even the first language they spoke. That was in a big way an effect of the thousands of French immigrants entering Russia because of the Great French Revolution. And obviously they spoke French. The revolution was viewed by some Russians as a romantic thing, even by some emperors. So French it is. Though it made French even more popular, high society Russians were learning it since time of Peter the Great, who said that Russia needs better relationship with Europe, where at that moment, late 1600s, French was already the main international language, as opposed to the Latin before that. Donc j'espère que j'ai bien répondu à votre question. Does Russia have oil?
Yes, of course. That oil and that oil. And nevertheless, Russia has the biggest resource of it. It's still not the biggest exporter of it. Probably just keep it in there not to drop the price. And we are moving to the next block of questions. The is questions. Is Russia the biggest country in the world?
Yep, it's around 1/10 of all the land of Earth and just a tiny bit smaller than Pluto. Though Russia wasn't always that big and that small in comparison. When Russia was a part of USSR, or before that when it was the Russian Empire, it occupied 1/6 of all the land. And it was a little bit bigger than the continent of North America or previously mentioned Pluto. Russia grew to these monstrous sizes because of lots of bloody wars and expeditions. And the annexation of Siberia started mainly by Yermak, who rather easily conquered a big chunk of it. And then, step by step, through the next 2 centuries, it grew to almost nowadays sizes. Is Russia Europe?
Yes and no. As we stated in the answer to the first question of this group, Russia is quite big, stretching from the Black Sea to the Pacific Ocean, thus occupying some territory in Europe and in Asia, with the main financial and political centers located in its European part, and its main resources being in the Asian part, in the freezing Siberia. Is Russian really used in Russia?
Yes, it is! It's the official language of the entire Russia. While Russia is a compilation of semi-independent states, think US, and each of the states has its own culture, including language. In total we have 37 state languages plus Russian. Each is spoken in a particular part of the country. In total there are 172 languages spoken by different nationalities in Russia, some spoken by millions and some by not more than just only one person. Keep it up, Yuksky language. Is Russia a third world country?
First, we need to agree on what is the third world country. At first, the term was used during Cold War to name countries that were on neither side, nor in socialist bloc, so USSR, Cuba, etc., nor in capitalist bloc, so US and Western Europe, for example. So if that's what you mean by third world countries, then obviously no. Later, the term third world countries was used as equal to developing countries. And then yes, Russia is usually still considered as a developing country, but no one actually knows what that means. There is no objective criteria on how to name a country developing or developed. So in the same group are put Somalia, Afghanistan, India, China and Russia. So yeah, Russia is a third world country, but what does it actually mean? Is Russian hard to learn?
А вы как думаете? In general it's considered yes, but it really depends on what is your native language and what is your second language. For example, if you are from US and UK and you speak only English, it may be hard for you because the system is completely different. Letters are not from Latin alphabet, but rather inspired by Greek. Grammar is also quite complicated and very flexible, not mentioning the strange sounds like ts, ch, sh, yo, ye, like in this one. У крошки-матрешки пропали сережки, сережки, сережка нашел на дорожке. But if you have as your second or native language one of the Slavic group like Bulgarian, Ukrainian, Serbian, etc., it will be much easier for you. As we told you earlier, Russian alphabet is based on Greek, so for people who know Greek, it will be rather easy to read our letters. Russian language was also influenced a lot by French, so when pronounced, some of the words can be recognized by the French speaker. For example, abonnement, газета, барак, багаж, etc. But nevertheless, it's difficult. We encourage you to learn it, because first of all, it's interesting. You'll be able to enjoy Anna Karenina in Crime and Punishment in original, and also freely travel through the post-Soviet world where Russian is known almost by everyone. And the next level pleasure is of course to be able to read Russian cursive. On that we are finishing our first 3 blocks of questions, and the next part will be when and why questions. Time to answer when questions. And the first one is when Russia learned to read.
So obviously when it learned to write, right? And the first documents that we have, copies of which survive till nowadays, are some trading agreements with Eastern Roman Empire, which proves only that the government knew how to read and write. And what about ordinary people? At least in the city of Novgorod, people knew how to read and write a century later. And as a proof, we have those letters written on birch bark. Some of them are lessons written by the school children, and some of them are letters written between friends, business partners, or lovers. Like, for example, this one, which says, Boris to Anastasia, when you receive that, send to me a man with a horse, because I'm busy here. And also, send me a shirt, because I forgot mine at yours. But it doesn't speak for the whole of Russia. Even at the time of the communist revolution, only around 20% of the people were literate. Because of that, Soviet Union started a big educational campaign which lasted until 1940s. And by the 1940s, they considered the problem with illiteracy solved. And the next question you asked us in Google, when Russia was baptized?
It happened in 988, while the first attempt was undertaken by Byzantium in the middle of 9th century, with the aim to bring Russians under Byzantine control. It was not super successful. Vladimir, knyaz, in Russian prince, was actually the one who baptized Russia, choosing Orthodox Christianity in the period when people from multiple religions were coming to him and trying to convert him into their faith. To Muslims, he famously answered about the thesis of prohibition of wine drinking. Russia has fun drinking. To the Jews, he said they don't have land and he doesn't like it. By the way, the land was taken from them by his own father. To the Catholics, he said that his ancestors didn't like this religion, so go to the place where you came from. And to the Orthodox, he said, we'll think about it and call you later. At the same time, Russia made a military agreement with Byzantium in order to help them to defeat some rebels, with the price of the sister of Byzantium Empress, Anna, whom Vladimir liked and wanted to marry. The emperor was kinda okay with that, cause they needed help, but he asked Vladimir to get baptized, to which he agreed, defeated rebels, married Anna, and step by step baptized the whole Russia. That's it about baptizement. The next question is, when is Russian Christmas?
It is January 7th, not December 25th. This is because the Russian Orthodox Church uses older Julian calendar, while we regular people use new Gregorian calendar. And January 7th by the new calendar is December 25th by the old calendar. So that's why. But no worries, Christmas festivals in Moscow start as early as November and last till March, so come anytime. And the next question is, when Russia was founded?
So technically Russia was founded only 29 years ago, in 1991, when Soviet Union collapsed into the multiple independent countries, one of which is Russia. But it will be strange to ignore the history according to which the first Russian state, which we call Ancient Rus or Kiev Rus, was organized in 9th century in the area of Eastern Europe. That state disintegrated into the multiple independent states in the time of the Mongol invasion, only to be reunited again into the Russian state, which since the middle of 17th century is called Russia. Next question is, when Russia became independent?
Never. And you know why? Because Russia was never under anyone's rule. And nevertheless, there were tough pages in Russian history, like the Mongol invasion, Polish occupying Moscow, Napoleon with his soldiers sitting in Moscow for more than a month, Nazis firing guns like 20 kilometers from the city. But none of them were able to actually rule the country. The next group of questions is why questions. Why Russia fails?
That's a good one, but I don't understand actually what it means, so no answer. Why Russian ballet is the best?
While ballet didn't born in Russia and the first Russian ballet group haven't appeared until 18th century, Russian ballet indeed is considered the best in the world. Partly it's thanks to Sergei Diaghilev, the impresario, who for the short 6 years was able to make specifically Russian ballet a world-known phenomenon. Diaghilev at first was not really interested in ballet, more in visual arts and music, but once the Russian state subsidized him to promote Russian ballet into foreign countries, and so he did it. He brought lots of talented dancers to Europe and to United States. He worked with genius composers and the best visual artists for making decorations for his set. And he himself was a very talented PR manager. The other thing that made Russian ballet #1 is the music. 3 out of top 5 best ballets are written by Russians, 2 by Tchaikovsky and also 1 by Prokofiev. By the way, since you're probably on your coronavirus confinement, you can watch performances of Russian ballet group in Bolshoi Theatre through this link for free. And the next question is, why Russians use this?
Okay, so Russians are actually not using smiles like or. Instead, they just use round brackets, like. That's less now because everyone is using emojis nowadays, but sometimes it's still like that. There are multiple reasons. First of all, this little one, it's just a polite smile. No emotions, just friendliness. You can use it at the end of almost every sentence. Second reason is, it's faster. And just a cherry on the top, a quote from the great Russian author Nabokov. When he was asked in 1969 where he would put himself amongst the most prominent authors, he answered, "I often think there should exist a special typographical sign for a smile. Some sort of concave mark, a supine round bracket, which I would now like to trace in reply to your question. Why Russia is so big?"
Answered before, see the third block question #1. Why Russians are beautiful?
Oh, thank you, dear. And the extra question is, what Russia is famous for?
Nureyev,
Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy,
Borscht,
Blini,
Tchaikovsky,
Kandinsky,
Lenin,
Rasputin,
St. Basil's Cathedral,
Baikal,
Trans-Siberian Railroad,
St. Petersburg.
coldest city on earth, Oymyakon.
So these were the most Googled questions about Russia, and write us in comments if you have anything else that you would like to know about Russia or post-Soviet countries. Don't forget to subscribe, switch on the notifications, and like our video if you liked it. See you next Saturday.